Midlife bodies are being quietly hijacked by a hormone you rarely blame, insulin. You can eat less and move more, but that stubborn muffin top after 35 often won't budge, not because you're lazy, but because your insulin signaling and body composition changes as you age. In this video, first we'll explain exactly why insulin makes belly fat cling harder after 35, show the science in plain language, and give you 3 practical fixes you can start this week to lower insulin spikes and shrink that stubborn waistline. We'll cover what insulin actually does, how aging and muscle loss amplify its effects, and the simple timing, food, and movement tweaks that make the biggest difference. Stick around until the end for a 7-day action plan you can use immediately to test these changes and finally outsmart the muffin top. How insulin stores fat after 35. Many people find their waistline becomes harder to shift after mid-adulthood, and a central reason is insulin's changing role in how the body handles energy. Insulin is an anabolic hormone whose job is to clear glucose from the blood and direct it into tissues. It turns excess glucose into stored fat by activating enzymes that build fatty acids and triglycerides, by increasing the uptake of circulating triglycerides into fat cells via lipoprotein lipase, and by blocking the enzymes that break down stored fat, like hormone-sensitive lipase. Short sentence. When meals repeatedly spike insulin, for example, after refined carbohydrate or sugary drinks, those biochemical pathways favor putting energy into adipose tissue rather than burning it. Age-related changes make this storage bias more pronounced after 35. Muscle mass and metabolic flexibility tend to decline without deliberate maintenance, and skeletal muscle is the largest site for insulin-stimulated glucose disposal. Less muscle means less capacity to take up glucose, which forces insulin levels higher to achieve the same clearance. At the same time, hormonal shifts and common lifestyle patterns, less movement, more sitting, disrupted sleep, higher chronic stress, raise baseline insulin or make tissues less responsive to it. Visceral fat, the kind that hugs internal organs and shows up as a muffin top, is metabolically active and releases inflammatory signals such as TNF-alpha and IL-6 that blunt insulin signaling, creating a feedback loop where insulin promotes more fat storage and the increasing fat worsens insulin action. Tissue-specific differences in insulin sensitivity explain why fat accumulates in certain places. Muscle often becomes insulin-resistant sooner than adipose tissue, so glucose that muscle won't take up can be diverted into fat. Meanwhile, insulin's action inside fat cells continues to drive triglyceride synthesis and block lipolysis, so energy is preferentially routed to storage. Later, as adipose itself becomes insulin-resistant, suppression of lipolysis weakens and free fatty acids rise in the bloodstream. The liver then packages some of those lipids into VLDL particles, promoting ectopic fat in liver and elsewhere and amplifying metabolic disruption. The result is a stubborn, often centrally located fat depot that's maintained by both higher circulating insulin and the body's shifting tissue responses to that hormone. There are practical ways to break that insulin-driven storage pattern because the mechanisms point directly to solutions. Restoring or preserving lean muscle through resistance training improves glucose disposal and lowers the insulin needed to handle meals. Choosing foods that blunt insulin spikes, higher fiber vegetables, whole proteins, healthy fats, and fewer refined carbs and sweetened beverages reduces the frequency and magnitude of insulin surges. Small behavioral shifts help too. Moving after meals, prioritizing sleep, and lowering chronic stress all improve insulin sensitivity. Clinically, monitoring fasting insulin or discussing metabolic testing with a healthcare provider can clarify whether insulin and glucose handling are contributing to fat gain. Start small and be specific about one habit to change this metabolic pattern. Replace a sugary drink with water or a whole food alternative. Add resistance or bodyweight work into your routine several times a week, and aim to move after meals rather than sitting immediately. These adjustments target the exact pathways: less frequent insulin spikes, stronger muscle glucose uptake, and reduced inflammatory signaling that drive the muffin top after 35. If you want help translating these steps into a personalized plan, consider reaching out to a clinician or certified trainer who can tailor interventions to your current health and goals. Stress and cortisol connection. Chronic stress pushes your body into a biochemical state that favors belly fat. When you're stressed, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal (HPA) axis signals the adrenal glands to release cortisol. That hormone ramps up gluconeogenesis in the liver and raises blood glucose, which in turn triggers insulin release. Insulin being the storage hormone that directs excess energy into fat cells. Short bursts of stress aren't the issue. It's the day-after-day elevation or dysregulation of cortisol that shifts energy storage toward visceral adipose tissue, the fat that sits around organs and shows up as a stubborn midsection bulge. Worse, abdominal fat is uniquely sensitive to cortisol. Visceral fat cells express more glucocorticoid receptors, so when cortisol is elevated they grow and multiply more readily than fat elsewhere. At the same time, chronic cortisol can blunt normal daily rhythms, flattening the morning-to-evening decline in cortisol, which correlates with increased central fat accumulation and impaired insulin sensitivity. Stress also nudges behavior. People reach for quick, energy-dense foods and skip movement, which spikes insulin repeatedly across the day and further reinforces fat storage. It's a metabolic feedback loop. Cortisol raises blood sugar, insulin stores that sugar as fat, and repeated cycles deepen insulin resistance. There are concrete, evidence-based ways to break the loop. Start with simple stress reduction practices that reliably lower cortisol. Diaphragmatic breathing for 5 minutes, mindfulness or cognitive behavioral techniques, or brief bouts of walking. Prioritize sleep, because insufficient or fragmented sleep raises evening cortisol and worsens insulin sensitivity. Nutrition matters too. Focus on regular meals with protein and fiber to blunt insulin spikes, and reduce frequent intake of refined carbohydrates that trigger repeated high insulin pulses. Exercise is powerful. Resistance training and moderate-intensity aerobic work improve insulin sensitivity by increasing muscle glucose uptake and boosting resting metabolic capacity. Small, specific swaps, choosing Greek yogurt and berries instead of a croissant, or a 10-minute post-meal walk, make a measurable difference over weeks. Putting these pieces together into a routine turns theory into results. Begin your day with a protein-focused breakfast and a brief breathing exercise to set a calmer hormonal tone. Schedule 2 strength sessions a week to build muscle that clears glucose more effectively without heavy insulin demands. Use short walks after meals to blunt postprandial glucose spikes. If evening stress keeps you wired, implement a wind-down routine. Dim lights, no screens for 30-60 minutes, and a predictable bedtime. Track what you do and how you feel for a month. Note cravings, sleep quality, and energy, and you'll see patterns to tweak. Start small and be consistent. Replace one stress-driven snack with a protein option today. Add a 5-minute breathing break before your next meeting, or take a short walk after dinner. If stress feels entrenched or you suspect hormonal or metabolic disorders, consult a healthcare professional for targeted testing and personalized guidance. Small daily changes disrupt the cortisol, insulin cycle and, over time, reduce the biochemical pull that favors fat around the middle. Signs of carbohydrate sensitivity. Many people experience a predictable pattern after eating carbohydrates. A quick burst of energy that collapses into fatigue, a return of hunger soon afterward, or a sudden craving for something sweet. Other common signals include bloating after bread, pasta, or rice, brain fog and irritability following a high-carb meal, and a steady pattern of midday energy crashes that naps or more coffee won't fix. Small, repeated clues like these are often overlooked because they don't scream medical problem, yet together they create a clear portrait of carbohydrate sensitivity. Start by paying attention to timing and triggers. If you regularly feel alert and satisfied after protein and fat-rich meals, but wiped out after oatmeal, bagels, or a sandwich, that contrast is meaningful. Notice whether cravings for refined sweets spike within a short time of a carbohydrate-heavy snack. Also watch for physical clues. Visible abdominal puffiness after certain foods, waking up hungry despite a late dinner that was high in carbs, or frequent late-night snacking that feels uncontrollable. Real-world examples help. A colleague who can't make it through the afternoon without a candy bar, a parent whose energy collapses after a quick bread-based lunch, or someone who feels sluggish and bloated whenever they eat pasta. Objective signs are just as important as sensations. Routine labs that raise suspicion include a fasting blood glucose that's higher than expected for you, an elevated HbA1c, or lipid patterns such as high triglycerides that often accompany carbohydrate-driven metabolic strain. A continuous glucose monitor or simple fingerstick checks can reveal rapid post-meal spikes followed by dips, classic physiological evidence of sensitivity. Family history of type 2 diabetes or metabolic syndrome amplifies the likelihood that those symptoms are meaningful rather than random. There are clear, practical responses once you recognize the pattern. Keep a short food and symptom log for a week to match meals to reactions. Try small swaps. Replace a refined carb breakfast with eggs and vegetables. Trade sugary snacks for an apple with nut butter or plain Greek yogurt with berries. And pair starchy sides with protein and fiber to blunt blood sugar swings. Add gentle post-meal movement, like a 10-20-minute walk, which helps blunt glucose surges. If uncertainty remains, discuss targeted testing with your clinician, fasting labs, an oral glucose tolerance test, or short-term use of a glucose monitor can confirm the pattern and guide treatment. If these signs resonate, take a simple next step. Track what you eat and how you feel for several days. Consider substituting one refined carb meal each day with a balanced alternative, and bring your observations to a healthcare professional or registered dietitian. Small experiments reveal a lot. Within a short trial, you can see whether your energy, cravings, and bloating shift. That information makes it easier to move from confusing symptoms to a clear plan that supports both how you feel now and longer-term health. Role of fiber in metabolic health. Dietary fiber is a powerful, often overlooked lever for improving metabolic health. Many people eat too few plant fibers, and that deficit directly affects blood sugar control, insulin demand, and the inflammatory signals that promote fat storage around the belly. Low-fiber diets feed a different microbial community in the gut, one that produces fewer beneficial metabolites and more factors that can leak through the gut lining and worsen insulin resistance. Add more viscous, soluble fiber, and you change how your body handles a meal. Soluble fibers form a gel in the gut that slows gastric emptying, blunts post-meal glucose spikes, and reduces the pancreatic insulin burst needed to clear blood sugar. That same gel traps bile acids, helping lower circulating LDL cholesterol, and provides substrate for fermentation by gut bacteria. The short-chain fatty acids produced, particularly butyrate and propionate, signal through gut hormones such as GLP-1 and PYY, improving insulin sensitivity and increasing satiety. In short, fiber reduces the volume of insulin your body needs and shifts internal messaging toward better metabolic balance. Not all fibers act the same. Insoluble fiber adds bulk and speeds intestinal transit, which helps with bowel regularity and can indirectly support metabolic health by limiting chronic exposure to pro-inflammatory compounds. Viscous soluble fibers, like those found in oats, barley, and many legumes, are especially effective at moderating glucose and lipid responses after meals. Fermentable fibers, pectins from fruit, inulin from chicory and onions, and resistant starches in cooled cooked potatoes and green bananas, nurture beneficial strains such as Bifidobacterium and Akkermansia, species linked to enhanced gut barrier function and lower systemic inflammation. These microbial shifts reduce endotoxin-related inflammation that otherwise contributes to insulin resistance. Practical changes are straightforward and sustainable. Replace refined grains with whole grains. Add legumes to salads and soups. Keep fruit skins on when edible, and sprinkle seeds like chia or flax into yogurt or smoothies. Start meals with a salad or a vegetable-based soup to naturally slow the glycemic impact of what follows. Increase fiber gradually and pair it with adequate fluids to avoid gastrointestinal discomfort. Combine dietary upgrades with strength training and regular movement for amplified effects on body composition and insulin sensitivity. If you're on glucose-lowering medication or have digestive conditions, coordinate changes with your healthcare provider so adjustments can be safe and effective. Take one simple swap today. Add a legume or an extra vegetable to a meal and notice how your appetite and energy change over the week. Small, consistent increases in fiber reshape the microbiome, reduce insulin demand, and support long-term metabolic resilience. So act now and bring plants to the center of your plate. Benefits of time-restricted eating. Shifting when you eat. Not just what you eat, can dramatically reduce the number of daily insulin spikes that tell your body to store fat. That constant insulin exposure is what keeps energy locked into stubborn belly fat for many people, and changing the eating window tackles that directly. Simple adjustments in timing change hormone rhythms, improve metabolic flexibility, and often produce measurable reductions in waist circumference without drastic calorie counting. It's not magic, it's physiology. Time-restricted eating, TRE, compresses your daily calorie intake into a consistent window each day. Examples include an 8-hour window, often called 16:8, a 10-hour window, or an earlier 6-8-hour window that finishes in the afternoon. Many people report easier weight loss and smaller midsections on these patterns. Early windows that align more closely with daylight hours tend to amplify benefits because they sync with circadian biology and improve blood sugar handling. Small and simple changes, like finishing dinner 2 to 3 hours earlier than usual, can have outsized effects. The mechanisms are clear and practical. Fewer meals spaced within a shorter time frame mean fewer insulin surges, and lower overall insulin exposure helps the body access stored fat more readily. Improved insulin sensitivity follows, which reduces stubborn visceral fat around the abdomen, the same fat that makes jeans fit tighter. TRE also enhances cellular repair processes during fasting periods and can lower evening appetite by stabilizing hunger hormones. People often report steadier energy through the afternoon and better sleep when late-night eating is removed. Clinical trials and human studies have repeatedly shown improvements in glucose regulation and blood pressure in groups using TRE protocols, even when calorie intake was not tightly restricted. Putting it into daily life is straightforward and sustainable. Start with a 12-hour window. For example, eating between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., and after a week or two, tighten to a 10 or 8-hour window if it feels good. Prefer earlier windows when possible. A schedule like 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. aligns with your natural circadian rhythm and maximizes metabolic payoff. Keep meals balanced within the window. Protein and fiber help prevent overeating, and avoid compensating by overeating late in the window. Hydration, consistent sleep, and resistance exercise amplify results. If you take glucose-lowering medications or have a medical condition, consult your clinician before changing meal timing. Try it as an experiment. Track waist measurements, energy, mood, and fasting glucose if you monitor it. A couple of weeks of consistent TRE is enough to notice differences for many people. Start small, be consistent, and watch how a change in timing, not necessarily a change in food quality alone, can loosen the grip of stubborn belly fat. Muscle mass versus fat storage. Loss of lean muscle is one of the most powerful drivers behind stubborn fat gain, especially around the midsection. Muscle tissue is metabolically active. It consumes energy at rest, helps clear glucose from the bloodstream, and supports daily movement. Fat tissue, by contrast, is primarily a storage depot, valuable for survival, but not helpful when you want to maintain a higher resting energy expenditure. As muscle declines, the body needs fewer calories to function, so the same eating and activity patterns that once maintained weight can slowly shift toward greater fat storage. Rebuilding and preserving muscle reverses that metabolic tilt. Strength-focused resistance training elevates muscle protein synthesis, increases the number of mitochondria in muscle cells, and improves the muscle's ability to take up and burn glucose. Eating high-quality protein distributed across meals supplies the amino acids necessary for repair and growth, while adequate energy and recovery let those adaptations stick. In practical terms, the combination of progressive loading in the gym plus consistent dietary protein makes the body less likely to divert calories into long-term fat storage. The biology behind this is straightforward. Contracting muscle stimulates molecular pathways that drive growth and increase insulin-independent glucose uptake. The presence of more fiber and mitochondria improves metabolic flexibility. Fat cells, especially in the abdominal region, are hormonally responsive and expand when excess calories are repeatedly available. When muscle mass falls, that sink for nutrients shrinks, leaving more circulating glucose and lipids to be stored rather than used. Hormonal factors also play a role. Lower anabolic signaling blunts how efficiently muscle rebuilds after a meal or workout, making it easier for energy to end up as fat unless behaviors change. Put these pieces together and the action plan becomes clear. Prioritize compound resistance movements, squats, deadlifts, rows, presses, or their scaled alternatives, to recruit the largest muscle groups and create a strong stimulus for growth. Pair workouts with adequate, quality protein at meals and ensure recovery through sleep and reduced chronic stress. Track progress by strength gains and how clothes fit rather than only the scale. Muscle can change body composition without large swings in weight. Small, consistent changes, adding a couple of resistance sessions a week, swapping a carb-heavy snack for a protein-rich option, progressively increasing load, compound into measurable reductions in fat storage risk. Start simple and be intentional. Pick 2 or 3 compound exercises, commit to steady progression, and make protein a regular part of your meals. If you want structure, consult a coach or dietitian who can tailor load, volume, and nutrition to your needs. Your next step is to move in a way that challenges muscle and feed it the building blocks it needs. Do that, and the balance between muscle mass and fat storage will begin to shift in your favor. If you've been blaming yourself for the muffin top, stop. This isn't just about willpower. After 35, drops in muscle mass, shifting hormones, chronic stress, poor sleep, and high-carb diets make insulin resistance far more likely, and that pushes extra fat toward your midsection. It's not personal failure. It's biology, and there are things you can do. Quick summary of the key points. Insulin resistance drives stubborn belly fat. Age-related muscle loss and lifestyle factors make it worse. And the good news is insulin sensitivity is reversible with targeted changes. So what actually works? Build muscle with resistance training. Prioritize protein and fiber to blunt glucose spikes. Swap refined carbs for whole foods. Move after meals. Even a 10-minute walk helps. Improve sleep and manage stress. Cut down on alcohol, and talk with your doctor about testing or treatments if needed. Why these steps matter. Strength training gives you more metabolic muscle to clear glucose. Protein and fiber slow blood sugar rises. Better sleep and lower stress reduce hormonal signals that worsen insulin resistance, and small daily movements lower post-meal glucose peaks. Make it simple to start. Pick 2 strength sessions a week. Make your breakfast protein forward. Take a short walk after dinner. Aim for consistent bedtimes, and trade 1 sugary snack for a whole food alternative. Track how you feel and your waistline, not just the scale. Small, consistent changes compound faster than extreme diets. If this helped, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what one small change you'll try this week. First, I'll be back with a 20-minute beginner strength routine and a 7-day meal plan designed to improve insulin sensitivity, plus an interview with an endocrinologist to explain testing and treatment options. And if you're worried about medical conditions or medications, check in with your healthcare provider before making big changes. You're not broken, you're facing a fixable biology. Let's do this one practical step at a time.